Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is on an official visit to Washington in what is seen as a further strengthening of ties between the two nations. Now, earlier this year, Canberra signed a deal to buy nuclear-powered submarines from the United States as part of the so-called AUKUS agreement. This week, the state visit will be an important trip for Mr Albanese, but there are fears that the US may take its eye off its Pacific strategy to focus on events in the Middle East. Roger Maynard reports from Sydney.
Once a year, the sacrifice of Australians who fought in the Pacific and elsewhere during the Second World War is celebrated on Anzac Day. Now, once again, the Pacific region's strategic importance is sharply in focus as island nations are wooed by Beijing, while Australia and the United States move to counter the perceived threat from China.
I think the United States-Australia relationship is, as we're so often told in the rhetoric, it's stronger than it's ever been. I mean, Australia is now, in my view, locked into US grand strategy in Asia. Australia is giving the United States so much more and more in terms of bases in Australia, in terms of the ability to store defence materiel and logistics. So this visit comes at a very important time.
The growing importance of strong American-Australia relations is a view shared by Michael Green, Chief Executive of the US Studies Centre in Sydney.
State visits are a very special occasion. Only a handful of world leaders are invited to the White House for a state visit each year. So what it tells you is the Biden administration puts a very high priority on the Indo-Pacific, and in particular on Australia as a partner to deal with the growing uncertainty in this critical part of the world.
Even so, there are some political commentators who argue that Canberra should have been paying more attention when it comes to addressing China's intentions in the Pacific.
This is an enormous worry because the Australian government has let its guard down here. We've seen the Chinese sewing up deals with island nations right on our border, the latest being East Timor a matter of weeks ago. Now, we cannot really afford to have Chinese defensive position brought right up to our continental shelf, and so we really need stronger, not weaker, US ties.
It's a measure of those ties with the US that the Australian Prime Minister's visit is going ahead as storm clouds gather over the Middle East, with accompanying fears that America could be tempted to shift its focus away from the Pacific.
I think Albanese, like a lot of US allies in the region, will start to be worrying about this again. This has been a long-standing fear for US allies in Asia, that America keeps getting sort of pulled back into Europe or pulled back into the Middle East. Now, we thought that with Obama's pivot to Asia and with Biden continuing that rebalance, if you like, of American attention to this part of the world, that they were fully focused and energised on dealing with China. It's not like the US has taken its eye off the China ball, but nevertheless, the more that they keep getting sucked into the vacuum of the Middle East and Europe, the less attention they can give to this part.
There will be other important issues to discuss with Washington, including the AUKUS agreement, which will allow the Australian Navy to purchase American nuclear-powered submarines. Economic, climate and energy initiatives are also likely to be on the agenda. In the final analysis, there is much to unite the two nations.
And the fact is that Australia has a long history of pretty heavy involvement going back over a century in the Middle East with a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge. So I'm confident that when this comes up, the President and Prime Minister will be aligned and will have a strong statement of unity and solidarity to demonstrate.
We need shoring up, and we need reassurance that the Americans will be here to protect us.
While events both internationally and domestically could divert attention from the Australian Prime Minister's visit to Washington, it's clear that both countries need each other in these uncertain times, and particularly so in the Pacific region, where an increasingly assertive China continues to make its presence felt. Roger Maynard, CNA, Sydney.